Welcome into Rooster Rant. It is Sunday, September 28th. And Alex, man, got a lot to maybe crow about after this past weekend. What do you think?
Yeah, I was about to say after having 2 weeks of being on here after losses, but I wasn't on here last week. So 2 weeks for you, I guess, after being on here for losses. Yeah, it's good to talk about a South Carolina win. A lot of things to talk about and a lot of good things that happened last night for South Carolina.
Yeah, I think so too. And trust me, I was in the stadium, so I heard plenty of ranting going on. One of my very own brother, he was texting negative things the entire game, saying, "Well, this is going to boost the Gamecocks' confidence. They're going to keep doing what they've been doing." Look, we'll talk all about that tonight. I saw plenty of it. I heard some fire Mike Bobo shouts last night. I think they got their mics crossed there, and I heard a lot of stuff. So there is plenty to rant about. There is plenty to talk about. And look, some of the stuff that folks are ranting about, I do agree with. So we'll talk about all that tonight. But in case you missed it last night, the Gamecocks closed at a 5.5-point favorite in Vegas. And I think the over-under stuck around like 46, 47, something like that. But the Gamecocks put a whooping on the Wildcats by a score of 35-13. Really from the end of the first quarter on, it was all Gamecocks all the time. And, on every single facet of the game, offense, defense, special teams, all of it. We're going to talk all about that tonight. I want to quickly give you guys some team stats like we always do. Gamecocks got 20 first downs last night. Third down efficiency, Alex, something we've been talking about, 8 of 15.
Yep.
Really, really good number there. 2 for 4 on fourth down for the Gamecocks. 12 of 15 passing for Lenore Sellers, 163 yards. Rushing, Gamecocks piled up 178 yards rushing, largely behind Lenore Sellers, which was good for fans to see. And then penalties, the Gamecocks still hit their mark on penalties, Alex. 5 for 65. And then the two biggest keys to the game ended up being last night, or two. Really, I'm thinking about two different things. But 4 turnovers for Kentucky, 0 for South Carolina. Gamecocks forced turnovers multiple ways and got scores off of them. That was big. And then time of possession. The Gamecocks finally won the battle of time of possession by a final total of 31 minutes and 3 seconds versus 28 minutes and 57 seconds. So, Alex, before we get started, just opening thoughts on the game, and then we'll move into the intro.
Yeah, some of the stuff we talked about heading into the game, previewing game of, some of the key stats that you're looking for, things like that, all kind of went South Carolina's way. You mentioned the third down stats would be an 8 of 15 for South Carolina. That's an improvement from where it has been, but a lot of that has to go with, we'll get into this, some of what Lenore Sellers was doing, especially in that second half. But then also there was a little bit more success getting some things, especially in the second half, of moving the ball in those early downs. So that was good to see them, defensively for South Carolina. And, we'll dive more into this too after the intro. But, it kind of got off to a little bit of a rocky start. You saw Kentucky kind of do exactly what we thought they could do and didn't need to do for South Carolina, where they just kind of drove the ball down the field all with the run and Seth McGowan. But they made the adjustments very quickly after that drive and really kind of did a great job the rest of that game. One, stopping the run and then forcing pressure on Carter Bully. So South Carolina was able to kind of do what they needed to do to get the win. And that, I think it's this type of win is something that they needed going into this bye week, especially going into the stretch of what looks like, could be all top 15 games here in October.
Yeah. Speaking of top 15 games, the polls have come out for today, and no, South Carolina is not ranked. Not even receiving votes right now, Alex. We might talk about that a little bit later. But, Alex, let's roll that Rooster Rant intro. We'll be right back with the show.
The barnyard's fired up or down in the dumps. Rooster's high, Rooster's low. It's college football, don't you know? Either way, let's go. Let's talk about it. Let's scream and shout it. Let's fire everybody fast. Or celebrate, it's Rooster Rant. Now here's a late night Gamecock Matt Anderson and the pride of Hampton County, Alex Jones, and all of you on Rooster Rant.
Well, that is the lovely Rooster Rant intro video, and we appreciate all of you being here again. Get your comments going here in the chat box. We'll take a break here in a couple of minutes and get to all of them, hopefully, or at minimum as many as we can. But Alex, going through this game, I felt pretty confident the Gamecocks would win. I think you did too. You predicted 24-17. I predicted 24-16. Really, Alex, you look at it, I don't think either of us were counting on 2 defensive or special teams touchdowns in this game. So that's just gravy. We were pretty much right on the nose in this game. And, I'll start it off with, how Kentucky started it. They took the ball. They wanted it. They drove down the field 7-0, 8-play, 65-yard, 3-minute, 33-second drive. And then, look, the Gamecocks did what good teams are supposed to do at home. They answered. So 7-7 there, Alex. You keep going through here. Kentucky got a field goal to make it 10-7. Really just a fluke play. I don't know how the tight end got so open on that particular play. It looked like a missed assignment, miscommunication.
Yeah, it kind of looked like 2 guys went with one player. I thought it was a really well-designed play. So like they're going to get into like a heavy type of package for that, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, whatever it was, but it kind of snuck the tight end out. But that's the kind of thing, like, if you take out that explosive play, like that was one of their big explosive plays. Like it's even more of a good stat, kind of line for the defense. But that was just a good play that they kind of caught South Carolina on.
Yeah, and then the Gamecocks got the ball back, 4 plays, 21 yards. It was 10-7 at that point. They had to punt it. But I started tracking this during the game, Alex, and South Carolina got into on their first drive. Just going to go through it here. There was a 3rd and 7, a 3rd and 9, a 4th and 3, a 3rd and 1. There were a lot of big moments that the Gamecocks have not capitalized on over the first 4 games of the season that you saw kind of flip in this game. And those were big moments. I went into the game purposely wanting to track the 3rd downs. I wanted to know down and distance because the crazy stat that the Gamecocks are averaging prior to the game was like average 3rd down was 3rd and 12 or something, 3rd and 12 and a half, something like that. So I wanted to watch it. But you go through here and numerous times throughout the game, the Gamecocks were able to get that critical first down. We talked about on the start of the show, 8 of 15. But the game really changed with the fumble return for a touchdown. That seemed like the Gamecocks really started putting the pressure on Boley, the redshirt freshman, and two defensive scores in a row put the game up to the Gamecocks 21-10. The Gamecocks never looked back, scored 2 more touchdowns on the game, only gave up 1 more field goal. So I think it was South Carolina's most complete game of the season. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, defensively, we kind of talked about where, if South Carolina could get Cutter Boley and Kentucky's offense into, obvious passing downs, 3rd and longs, that's where they could really thrive just because it's going to be his first, road SEC started. You saw that early on after that first drive where South Carolina really forced those, 3rd and 5s or longer and forced passing situations. They really kind of got after Cutter Boley. And, Dylan Stewart had a really good game. Really each of all the edge defensive line and edge did. I mean, you saw Desmond Umeozulu get in there and make a big play. You saw Brian Thomas, JT Gear, and Dylan Stewart really just kind of feast. And, I thought, they moved Dylan Stewart around a little bit more. I thought that was a great kind of play design where they did a little twist on that fumble where he came right up the middle and nobody was there to block him. And then it was just, a good heads-up play by JT Gear to stay on the ball and watch the ball and go through the whistle to score that touchdown. But that was really where it switched, just because I think you kind of started to, get after Cutter Boley a little bit, maybe start to get some happy feet in the pocket types of things. And then, 2 plays later, you had the overthrow, which was just a really good play by Gerald Kogor, kind of a quick reaction type of thing after that ball was tipped to, take that to the house. And, you saw the flag go down on that play on that pick 6, and it just felt like last year's. And I don't know, what was they're going to call a low block, I think, or something like that is what they said. But if they're going to call it, but it looked like it's just the quarterback went down and there wasn't really anybody who touched him.
It was well after the play too. So I don't know if they picked it up because of that reason. Like the play was done, the touchdown was scored. I don't know.
Yeah, but to your point, that's really where the game switched, and you kind of felt like, all right, well, the South Carolina's offense was starting to get some things figured out, especially in the passing game, and you kind of felt like the defense at that point had all the momentum, wasn't going to let Kentucky get much going after
that. Excuse me. Yeah. 2 years in a row, Clayton White has made it quarterback hell for the guy under center for the Kentucky Wildcats. And look, I don't know what more you can ask for. I mean, I was surrounded by people who wanted more. And look, I get it. You want to score 100 points. Alex, the one thing that does stand out glaringly is the offensive line and the rushing game for South Carolina.
Yeah.
Really without Lenore Sellers last night and some of his Houdini moves. I mean, he goes in that phone booth and he turns into Superman sometimes. And it was a breath of fresh air. I was trying to get that saying right. A breath of fresh air for Lenore's to start converting on those third downs, those second downs, those first downs, but most importantly, third downs with his legs. But outside of that, Alex, you have 34 carries for not very many yards by a trio of running backs and Matt Fuller, Oscar Attaway, and Rasul Faison. I don't know how much of it's the offensive line still, which is frustrating to say, or how much of it is the running backs and the system, but still no improvement there, Alex. Pretty rough.
Yeah, it's something that they've got to get figured out in this bye week just because it has to improve. And, I did honestly like what I saw from Matt Fuller last night. Like, it seems like every time he gets the ball, like, he's at least going to get around 2 or 3 yards just because it seems like he's always falling forward. Rasul Faison kind of made the most of his carries in the red zone. There are a few on those touchdown plays were just well-blocked plays, had some tight ends pulling, some guards pulling. So those are nice plays, but that is got especially with these defense you're going to be facing here these next or really in October, like they're going to have to get some of them more going in the run game. But with Lenore Sellers, it kind of felt like he got back to a little bit more of who he was end of 2024, and even in that Virginia Tech game where he kind of just went after with the run. Like you saw that Virginia Tech game late in that game where he just took over with his legs. You saw that last night again. You saw him just I think quickly kind of make that decision where if something wasn't there, he was going. So I thought that was really good to see him, and I think you saw some even more confidence from him. And then Dre Jacobs really kind of needs a shout out too. That guy's taking a big step this season. He's quickly kind of becoming one of the Norris Sellers' top target. Like he was the only guy with more than one catch last night, and he's one that and Shane Beamer kind of shouted him out last night too for the steps he's taken. And also he was a captain too, so that shows kind of the respect he has on that team. And that's kind of just offensively, that's kind of the thoughts that we'll get more into. But I forgot to even, kind of shout out the secondary on defense too, because there are multiple times where Boley was kind of just standing in the pocket looking for somebody to throw, but that secondary really kind of covered up Kentucky's wide receivers and tight ends. So just wanted to quickly get that in there before we move all the way into offense.
Yeah, moving further into offense, Alex, it was another game of a makeshift offensive line, not necessarily the offensive line that the Gamecock coaches thought they were, and the players thought they were going to have in game 5 of the season, but it's where they're at right now. I'm just like everyone here. I heard John's comments. I'm talking about John Strickland talking about it's not that difficult to play offensive line, and it shouldn't be. I've never played it, so I feel weird saying that. But when I talk to someone who's done it for as many years and has as many friends that are still in the business as John does, it's very simple. So I don't know what's happening there. I actually asked John last night, and I'm waiting for him to get back to me a question. And if he answers it the way I think he will, I'll bring it to the show. I don't want to bring it out just to cause questions. But anyway, they're going to have to continue to get a push. Matt Fuller might be that guy. He is the thickest, kind of the biggest, meanest guy in that running back room. And that might be the thing they're lacking right now. But with the Norris Sellers getting 14 carries, I have no idea how many were designed runs. There were times in the first half I still saw Lenoris running sideways instead of running vertical. We all can point to that first down he didn't pick up. I think there were 2 of them last night for the Gamecocks, where just not knowing down distance where the marker is and getting across it. Attaway and Lenoris both had issues with that last night. Yeah. But he's going to need to continue to harken back to that Garcia pep talk he got last year where it was, hey, dude, you're 6'3", 230, 240 pounds, just bulldoze over people. I saw him last night running side to side away from a defensive back or a safety. I don't know. Maybe he's nursing an injury and get through the bye week kind of healthy kind of thing, but the Gamecocks need that version of Lenor's.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that early on, but I think that kind of improved as the game went on because there were times where he didn't just get north-south. Like that one that runs where he just – what's your typical Lenore Sellers runs where he runs for the first time and they just try to push him over and it doesn't work. Like I think you kind of saw that light maybe coming back on like mid-second quarter, get into that second half where he just started getting north-south a little bit more. And that's really what
I mean, I absolutely agree with that. And that it took a couple games last year. Let's not forget. It took a couple games, and we all remember the Vanderbilt game, a true freshman season where he just decided to run and no one could catch him. That was awesome. Do that more, right?
Yeah.
But he's got to protect himself. I mean, I had people in group text message with me saying Lenor's just took a NFL career decision. Well, I think everyone else in the stadium would too. If you're going to have millions of dollars in the NFL, but that doesn't mean he's not competing. If sometimes you got to protect your body. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, all the best to ever play the game. Drew Brees have done it. So I'm not that worried about that, but he does need to go get that yard when he can, but doesn't need to take unnecessary hits. And I think that's what the coaching staff has preached to him. It's the unnecessary hits that he doesn't need to take, but he needs to continue to be electric. I want to get to some of these questions in here, Alex. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to start at the top here. Hayne Painter going to have to be used to 3 yards per carry. I hope not. I hope Lenore Sellers can change that. Lenore Sellers isn't a 3 yard per carry guy. Last night, what he rattled off 81 yards rushing. I thought he'd be somewhere in the 40 to 75 range every single week. And he was negative yards rushing for the season or something close to that.
Yeah, and to that point in the run game, it still kind of felt like last night that there were too many people in the box defensively. They just felt like the linebackers are still right there, and I think that's part of the issue. I mean, along with some of the off-the line struggles we talked about, I still think that's something they got to get figured out in this bye week is how to spread it out a little bit more to get those linebackers and just less people in the box.
Yeah, and then Craig says, I can't fathom how hard it can be to run block. We aren't a 1A high school team. Craig, I'm right there with you, buddy. It's a hat on a hat. It's get the guy in front of you. At this point, the offensive line does not need to think about anything except for the person in front of them and just say, hey, QB running back, if there's a blitz, you got to pick it up because the offensive line ain't trying right now. They got to do the basics and the fundamentals, and they haven't done that quite yet. I will say, though, only 1 sack given up last night, or 2 sacks last night, and one of them was awful by Lenore. It was just another backpedal. I don't know if there's anywhere to go with the ball, but just it's so hard because you don't want to cut loose the thing that allows him to slip past those 3 guys that are about to tackle him because he can do it. But it's a fine line to walk. But yeah, Lenore's gonna have to see those blitzers and just adjust. Prentice Nolan, LSU is on the clock. Let's go Gamecocks. I had a lot of people in group chats last night, y'all, saying 10-2 can't keep us out. 10-2 can't keep us out. So that's what a game going into a bye week should be, though. It should be your team's riding high. It should be got the win, got back to 1-2 in the SEC, 3-2 overall. Go win your fair share of games the rest of the way. What, you got 6 of them left, Alex? So you got 6 games left or 7 games left. 7 games left. Yeah. Go win your fair share and see what kind of bowl you can get to, and maybe the playoffs if they can keep it going. We'll see. We can't take everything from Kentucky. Craig says Mad Dog almost nailed the score. Yeah, I wasn't on for his prediction, Craig. But I hope he said blowout because we've kind of been feeling that's been coming for a while, despite what it looks like on Saturdays. Craig said it doesn't matter what D line we go against, we can't move people. It's something weird there. I'm looking at more. Haynes says, I don't think there's time to improve the O-line during the season with the current coaches. Not being hateful, I'm sure they've tried, but it's not working. Look, I've never coached offensive line, but I would imagine that like any other sport I've played, when you're going through a rut, you go back to the fundamentals. You go back to what are we trying to do? It can be difficult to do that before a bye week. I'll be honest. During a bye week, you're game planning. You have to be prepared for what the defense is going to do. So you have to put stuff in. This is the time where they can go in and practice fundamentals for an entire week and get better. So if it's going to happen, hey, I think it's going to come over bye weeks. Cynical Aries giving up a hey and a Gamecock. Hey, happy you're in here, friend. Hayden said, I will say Faison's best runs were off tackle with no pulls or funny business, just hat on hat blocking. Yeah, Faison's best thing. And Alex, I'll let you talk to it first, and then I'll add anything.
Yeah, that's when I saw that comment that it kind of goes what I was talking about was the things they did on the goal line. I mean, Faison, those are two of his. They run block that very well in those two goal line plays, and maybe that's something they can find that they can do on those early downs too, because they were wide open holes for Faison to run, and I don't know if that was something Kentucky was doing different defensively at the goal line, but I think that's something they definitely need to look at and kind of see if they can move on with that in the future.
Yeah. So Alex, go ahead and pull that one off here. Anybody else that has any comments, please come on and say something. Looking at just the battle of the lines last night, Kentucky was able to get 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and South Carolina got 6 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. South Carolina forced 3 fumbles, recovered 2 of them, got 2 interceptions in the game. I think it was just a situation where Cutter Bowley, despite being a high 4-star, like that's what I try and remind folks. You can be as highly ranked in the country. The quarterback position, especially in the SEC, will humble you quickly. And look, Cutter came into a raucous environment. I want to go ahead and tip my hat to Gamecock fans, despite the weather, despite what the day looked like, the omens for the team coming into the week. The fan base showed up and showed out. It was an electric environment. Alex, we'll talk about this on Wednesday when we start getting some reactions from recruits that were on campus. But driving into the game, we were pretty late last night. We got in about 10 minutes before the kickoff. Todd Ellis on the radio talking about a lot of big recruits, where it seemed like a large number of recruits. He didn't talk any specifics of players or rankings, but a large number of recruits were there. So we'll talk about that Wednesday. Matt comes in here and says Trovon was moving people at times. I'm glad he's back. Yeah, he did pick up that 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct. But look, when you need your offensive line to get nasty, I'll take a couple more of those type of penalties than I'll take the false starts and the procedural penalties.
Yeah, he's been playing pretty aggressive this year. I mean, he had the Vanderbilt game or the South Carolina State game where he and Shed Surratt kind of pushed that guy all the way down the field and, kind of like dapped each other up after that. Like, he's been playing really aggressive. I think he and honestly, I think Kaysen Henry too have been two of the best offensive linemen when you look at what they've been able to do so far. And Kaysen was in a sling last night, so I think it's probably a good time that the bye week's coming this week for him.
Yeah, it's time to get healthy. James said, I wish they had pulled Sellers at the beginning of the drive. I get that he orchestrated a great drive, but at that point, we prefer to get QB1 safety on the sideline. I'll be honest, there was a lot of chippiness that was going on. There was chippiness leading to halftime, I feel like, Alex. There was chippiness earlier in the game. And there were comments around me, James. You weren't the only person saying, why is Lenore still in the game? I think that for a lot of reasons, it was one of those games where Beamer was trying to incite something in his team. It was, look, you are better than them. Go be better than them. We're not treating you with kid gloves. Yeah, good job. The defense has scored 14 tonight. Go score more. You're the offense. You got to go do it against an SEC team.
And, on that last drive, that 9-minute drive, Shane Beamer kind of talked about this tonight on his teleconference where, I think there were some things where, like, on that drive, they just wanted to, and he talked about play like smash mouth football on that drive and finish that drive. He talked about how they didn't finish at Missouri, but I think they had some things going on that drive where, with some of the issues you've had in the run game, I think you just want to try to build as much positivity in that aspect just because they were moving the ball from a running game standpoint and really doing whatever they wanted on that final 9-minute drive. So I think it was just kind of continuing to build on that. And I don't think you're going to see him running the ball much on that 9-minute drive, but then they put Doty in. But I think a lot of that was just kind of building things.
Yeah, I think so too, Alex. I think we might have a little glitch there. But no, like when Doty came in, I mean, it was clear that you were going to hand the ball off. Actually, I did wonder on that 3rd or 4th down if Shane was going to throw, because after a fake punt and calling timeouts at the end of the first half, it was definitely a message game. I think it was, and I don't think it was a message game at Kentucky as much as it was a message game for your own team. To say, look at this environment, look how they will react to you, look how they can carry you, and then also get out there and prove what you've done. I mean, look, my biggest disappointment in the game, Alex, might be at the end on that 9-play drive or 9-minute drive where you had 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 and 3 and you didn't get it. That was finishing the game for me, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, I think so. And we had a couple of comments here from Craig and Matt about some special team stuff. And that's right. Special teams kind of had an off night for South Carolina last night. They had some things. I mean, obviously, the kickoff going out of bounds to start the game. Like that was one where it's like you kind of felt like an oh no situation for South Carolina. Then you had the fake punt that ended up not working out. You had Jaquel Holman's kickoff return that got kind of taken back just because Nick Harbor did the T thing that they did in the Illinois game that eventually became a new rule. So I think that's one positive thing you can look at for this game for South Carolina is that special teams, which has won you games in the past, really kind of had an off night, but it was your offensive defense that you really got it done.
Yeah, and talking about a couple other things, Matt Fuller starts to get more carries. I think he has to. Yeah. And I don't mean any disrespect to Rasul Faison or Oscar Attaway. Oscar Attaway is a guy that will get every yard that is in front of him. He will. He might not break one to the house, but he will get the yards that are in front of him. Rasul Faison probably can squeeze in a tighter windows than Oscar Attaway can, and obviously has more lateral quickness and ability to make guys miss in the open field. But at this point, when you have a threat like Lenore Sellers, you're going to have to start getting some yards on the ground that aren't Lenore's because you still need that unpredictability of the game flow.
Yeah, and some of the not having enough room to run issues are going to keep up. Like I think you have to give Matt Fuller some more, just because, like I said earlier, it seems like he's always falling forward and getting something positive out of a run, and that's going to be something that helps him on those early downs to not be into those obvious pass downs.
Yeah, well, Alex, I think it's the perfect time to take a break. We'll be right back after we hear from our sponsors, and we're going to look at a couple other things before we get out of here tonight. But Alex, go ahead and roll that, and any questions you have, fire through the sponsor break for sure.
Morning, Carl. Usual?
Yeah.
Your oldest was in here the other day. Said the two of you took a trip down to my neck of the woods. How'd that go?
You might as well give me one of those Carolina cars while you're at it.
I knew I liked that one.
Yeah.
There you go, my friend.
Thanks.
Hey, Carl. Congratulations.
See you tomorrow, Freddie.
You bet.
JC Sherbert here had a brilliant idea that some good friends of mine in Florence have told me about. Next time you're having a wedding or an event or anytime you got to feed a bunch of people, talk to my friends over at Flavortown Eats and Events. That's right. It's a food truck / trailer, prepares the food fresh on site right there for you. No hassle. It's absolutely delicious. They'll come out, turnkey solution to feed the masses at your event. Go to their website right now. flavortownflow.com. That's flavortownflow.com. They have all the contact information you need, and they are a proud sponsor of the Late Night Gamecock Show and the Chief Sports Network.
Welcome to Palm Casual Patio Furniture. Because we are the factory, Palm Casual has the ability to offer the highest quality outdoor furniture paired with world-class service. Since 1979, our factory showrooms have done our best to make the buying process as easy as possible for our customers. Our understanding of the many factors that go into your decision has helped us create our 30-day trial period that increases the level of comfort our customers feel during the shopping experience. Visit us in Somerville, Mount Pleasant, Myrtle Beach, and Bluffton, and online at palmcasual.com for our products in out-of-state locations. Go Gamecocks!
This is the Late Night Gamecock Show with the pride of Hampton County, Alex Jones. And with the king of late night, Matt Anderson. Go Gamecocks!
Welcome back into Rooster Rant. Again, it's about 7:30 right now, and it's Sunday, September 28th. Alex, October is going to be here. Our next show is October. And that'll be Wednesday night. Wednesday night, we will have the Late Night Gamecock Show. On that show, we're going to obviously talk about a lot of college football, maybe some recap of the SEC, where things stand, and big games, all that kind of stuff that's going to be coming up the following week. but it will be nice. It'll be very nice to not have to dig in deep to some opponent research. It'll give us a little bit of time before this stretch of 5 top 13 games in a row come about. But we'll also talk a little bit of basketball. Basketball is going to be here before you know it. Basketball starts at early November. I think they're usually around November 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that. So we're going to break down the out of conference schedule for you, let you know about anything we've heard from basketball practice. So make sure you're here Wednesday night. Even though there is no football game this weekend, there is still a lot to talk about in Gamecock land. One of those things to talk about, Alex, is time of possession and total yards per game. It's one of the things that I hear about the most, whether it's on the message board right now or whether it's just different friend groups I'm in, group texts I'm in, people I talk to, winning the time of possession and total yards. Well, why is that important? Well, if you just think about it logically, in worst case scenario, if you get 100 yards in a game, you should get a field goal or a touchdown no matter what. So the more yards you accumulate, the more points you're going to have. So that makes sense. But then time of possession, obviously, that makes sense too. The more time that you have the ball, the less time your opponent has to score. I'm not doing football 101 right now. I promise I have a point with this. But let's go back to the first game of the season, Alex. I can't even remember the time of possession, but I don't think South Carolina won it against Virginia Tech. If they did, it was by a slim margin. And then total yards, Virginia Tech won that by 8 yards. Now, we think about total yards, passing and rushing. That's what total yards are. Total yards aren't the punt and kick return yards. But I just started thinking about this yesterday, Alex, and I was like, what are some possible reasons outside of the offensive line that this team is struggling in both of those metrics according to the national average? Well, Alex, I was interested in this. Once I brought in return yards into the picture, you go back to that South Carolina Virginia Tech game, and South Carolina actually out yardaged Virginia Tech 408 yards to 403 yards. Go back to South Carolina State. South Carolina State had 270 total yards versus the Gamecocks 253. Well, when you add in the return yards for the Gamecocks and the Bulldogs, the Gamecocks out yardaged South Carolina State by 93 yards. Same thing with Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, South Carolina actually got them by 5 yards and then by 19 total yards when you do all this. So you guys get the gist here. The only game this season the Gamecocks have been outproduced is the Missouri game minus 38 yards. So not a humongous swing. But, Alex, when you're scoring 3 punt returns, you're having defensive touchdowns, what does that do? Well, the other team's offense goes right back on the field, and you never truly possess the ball.
Right.
And two, when you're getting those types of things that happen for you, the field's usually shorter. Either you're missing out on those yards and the time of possession, or your offense gets the ball having only go 30 yards instead of having to go 65 yards. So I wanted to bounce that off of you, Alex. I mean, could that be a reason, or is it just the offensive line sucks and Mike Shula sucks?
Yeah, I'm sure it's part of the reason. And I mean, that's, I think that's kind of why, Shane Beamer and South Carolina stress special teams just because of what it can do for, I mean, obviously, when your offense is getting off to a little bit of a slow start to the season, like that's something like that's won them games, helped them win the Virginia Tech game, helped them win the South Carolina State game. And then to your point, that does kind of, I guess skew may not be the right word, but from a time of possession thing, like you technically don't get time of possession for that, and your defense stays out in the field. So if you can kind of figure out some of that stuff offensively that we talked about with the early downs type of stuff, where you're getting into more obvious or less obvious passing downs, you'll help your time of possession thing. But at the end of the day, like whatever, a win's when you get the most points on the board. So do whatever you can to do that. But I think sometimes time of possession can be a little bit skewed a little bit. But you see teams like Vanderbilt who that's what they do. They win holding the ball and having time of possession. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that time of possession and total yards number really kind of shake out here for the rest of the season, because it does kind of feel like there are some things they're starting to figure out or you're hoping that they start to figure out from an offensive standpoint.
And I was thinking about it more last night and into this morning on the drive home last night. And then I woke up and I was thinking about the show. What are we going to talk about, right? And I do think that 9-minute drive is more than just 3 yards a carry, whatever it ended up being. It's you in a situation where the game was in hand, you prove to yourself that you could possess the ball for 9 minutes when maybe the game's not in hand. Maybe it's a field goal lead, or you're down by a field goal and you can stop the other team from getting the ball back. That's pretty huge. But, just looking at the return yards, South Carolina was 80 return yards against Virginia Tech, 117 versus South Carolina State, 54 versus Vandy, 137 for versus Mizzou. And then last night, Gamecocks only had 9 return yards. Obviously, that botched punt return by Vakari Swain probably impacted that, because that was just straight negative yards. So anyway, I don't know, Alex. I just thought about that, and I'm going to be tracking it. One of my little pet projects over the next 2 weeks is going to go look at all the Gamecocks' actual drives and see how long they lasted, because that's something that I think would be very telling.
And this is something, and kind of to your point, but something I wanted to bring up earlier too. Everybody's kind of talking about the drive to end the game, basically. But the drive that really kind of stood out for me, and we were talking about this in the press box, was after Brandon Ceesay's interception, you get the ball at Kentucky's 43. There's 2 minutes on the clock, and you're on there. All right, can South kind of do what they need to do? Because it felt like they really need to get that score to kind of keep pushing this game out of the way. They really took care of business on that drive and handled it really well and got down the field quick. And I think that was kind of the drive that really kind of ended the game, because you felt like at that point Kentucky wasn't coming back. But that was something that kind of stood out to me, was like after that interception, like it could have been like you've seen them do it kind of in the past, where the clock just runs out and maybe you get a field goal out of it, or maybe just run the clock out. But they went down and scored on that drive, and kind of goes to your point of where like kind of making not a statement game for Kentucky, but a statement game for them. They can go out there and do it offensively.
And that's going to be the big test, Alex, because as we turn our attention ahead here, I'm going to go and pull it up, but you have LSU. You're going to Baton Rouge. Do we know what LSU is yet? I'm not sure. Your thoughts on LSU so far, Alex?
Yeah, they gotten off to a little bit of a slow start offensively, and kind of thought with Nussmeier and those guys that they'd be a little bit better, but also like Blake Baker's kind of changed that defense for LSU. They're really good defensively this year, so that's going to be a test. Like, could end up being a low scoring type of game. You're going to have a lot of really good players to deal with on LSU offensively, but we'll see kind of what there are, because I to your point, like I'm not sure we even know what LSU is fully to this point.
And I'm looking through LSU's schedule right now. They're going to have a bye week coming off a loss to Ole Miss. The Gamecocks are on a bye week as well, so that matches up nicely for South Carolina and LSU. But for everyone making a big deal about the Gamecocks schedule, Alex, just listen to LSU's schedule after South Carolina. Number 18, Vandy. Number 6, A&M. Number 10, Alabama. Then they have Arkansas. We'll see what they do with the firing of Sam Pittman today. And then they finish the season at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, we know they're not going to have John Mateer. They're next up on the list after LSU. It's the home fairground game. Oklahoma with John Mateer, I thought they looked like one of the better teams in the country. But, you look at their box scores here, Michigan 24-13, Temple 42-3, Auburn 24-17. That's a mix of having one of the best players in the country and not. And they won't have him against South Carolina. And even after South Carolina. So, before the Gamecocks play the Sooners, they have the Red River rivalry versus Texas. Yeah. Then they have Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, LSU. So SEC is just difficult, and we're not going to go too far down that rabbit hole. But I think the real question is, I think we're going to find out truly how good South Carolina is and can be, because I don't think you've seen the best version of South Carolina so far. And all of these teams are going to have to prove how good they are. There's going to be film and scouting on every which way this game goes. And I think that's one of the reasons that Shane's teams get better over the course of the year. Say what you want about in-game adjustments, blah, 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 blah. They get better as the season rolls on. But, Alex, it's a gauntlet, but would you want it any other way as a Gamecock fan?
I mean, it's how it's always been. And it feels like this bye week is coming just at the right time for South Carolina, to be honest, where you kind of maybe not, maybe it could have been after the LSU game, but it feels like, with this bye week coming this week, you kind of, do what you can to get everybody back and healthy. It was good to see Judge Collier back out there. He did get a little bit of reps in there. So, get healthy, because you're going to need everybody in this stretch in October.
And Alex, I'm looking at the polls that came out today. I mean, I've never seen a more schizophrenic top 25 poll through the first 6 weeks of a season. You have Ohio State, number 1 in the country. This probably deserved. Oregon, number 2 in the country, probably deserved. Miami, number 3, probably deserved. But then you go from 4 all the way down, and there's question marks everywhere in my mind. Look, Ole Miss has a different quarterback now. How long until the book's out on him? That's one of the questions I have. Is Simmons going to come back and be the quarterback? Is there going to be a quarterback controversy at Ole Miss? Oklahoma, I don't think they'd be ranked number 5 in the country if they didn't have a 4-0 record behind them. Beating really Michigan is what they're hanging their hat on at this point. And then you have A&M 4-0. They're hanging their hat on a Notre Dame win. Don't know how good that is right now. And then Penn State, Indiana, Texas, Alabama, they've all shown their flaws.
Yeah, and that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to watch here, really, because this next bye week through the rest of the kind of this mid-October slate. Like, it's a lot of teams that we still won't learn a lot about. Like, some of these teams have had a few early season matchups, but then also been playing a lot of teams that obviously they should win. So really, this kind of feels like this SEC slate starting to really get going, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch because it feels like this league right now is pretty wide open.
Yeah, it does. And looking at it right now, Alex, at this top 25, I don't think that many people had Georgia Tech at 17, Florida State at 18, Vanderbilt at 16, Texas Tech at 11. It's pretty fun to watch right now. But you also look at this, Alex. We're at the stage of the season where if you have 2 wins, you're disqualified from being in the top 25 unless your name is Notre Dame. Or 2 losses. You're disqualified if your name's not Notre Dame. But I did find it interesting, Alex, and I just want your take on this briefly. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it. I'm not going to get too fired up about the polls. But the fact that South Carolina is receiving 0 votes now, and, looking back to just, let's see, week 5, I don't think they received any votes in week 5. After losing to let's see here. Yeah, so they received votes after losing to Vanderbilt. They did not receive votes after losing to Missouri, and did not receive votes for beating Kentucky. Thoughts on that, Alex? Do you think this team should be worthy of top 25 at this point in the season?
Right now, I think you're probably obviously from what the poll is saying, you're out on the outside. That's I'm probably okay with that just because of some of the things you've had struggles early on this season. Obviously, you're 3-2 now. You needed that win versus Kentucky, but they'll have every opportunity to get themselves back into the top 25 in this next few weeks of schedule. So I'm not too surprised they're not receiving votes, but that's something they can easily change here these next few weeks.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me the bias with. I'm just using Notre Dame as an example because they always get voting bias. Look, I have friends that are big Notre Dame fans. I don't hate Notre Dame. But what I will tell you is that Notre Dame's 2-2, and their losses have come to Miami and Texas A&M. And the A&M game was close. The Miami game was close-ish. They're getting a lot of credit for almost wins, in my opinion. And look, South Carolina is probably the only team outside Notre Dame that's 2 losses have come against teams currently ranked inside the top 18 of the coaches poll and inside the top 19 of the media polls. So, look, sometimes the game doesn't go your way. You have to kind of tip your hat to the opponent. I think that Missouri just flat out beat South Carolina. They played well enough to win the game. So I thought South Carolina played, if to use a Dabo thing, if Missouri played their B game and beat South Carolina played their C+ game, and that was the difference. Vanderbilt, look, I know I'm not trying to play, sunshine pumper Matt here, but that game when Lenore Sellers went down was still very much a ball game. It didn't get out of hand until after he left the game. So I'm excited to see what South Carolina does because I'm not sure that I know. I do think the offensive line is going to be an issue for a very long time. I don't think it gets fixed this year, as some people have talked about in the chat, and I agree with them. But it can't be worse. Like, that's my thing. Like, it can't get worse than this. And Lenore is that quarterback for a bad offensive line if he's going to run the ball like he did last night.
Yeah, I think the key is in this bye week to figure out any ways that you can improve in the run game, and then also just kind of build for if Lenora Sellers, just kind of build on what you're able to do last night in that game, because it really got, like we talked about at the top of the show, they kind of felt like he was getting back to that into 2024 form where the guys just couldn't tackle him, and that's really what could drive the offense.
Yeah, and I do want to make a point here. I'm reading the chat. Carolina Titan, SE Scout Guy, and Grant. I am not making the argument for South Carolina to be in the poll or to be ranked. The argument that I'm more making is I don't understand the polls. I don't think that people vote in them are educated enough on all the teams to vote. Because look, you got to find a criteria. It's the same reason I hate the way that the College Football Selection Committee selects their teams. There's no transparency. It's just you have one loss by your name. You're, whatever, 18th in the country like Florida State, where Florida State pantsed Alabama and now Alabama jumped them, and they're 8 spots higher. I just don't understand the logic of it. But look, football is not a game where you can say me versus you means I'll beat that team. You can't.
Yeah, and that's why I think preseason polls cause some of that too.
Yeah. Grant made such a funny point down here. I think it's the -9 rush yards versus Mizzou.
Yeah,
I think that alone should be.
I'll do it.
Receive a vote. Can't receive a vote, but look, no. I look at South Florida still getting votes. They're the first team out of the top 25 poll. Their wins against BYU and Florida are carrying a lot more weight than a lot of other teams. I mean, I could do a whole poll attacks article. I mean, I love trying to figure out what people are thinking and how the rankings work. But I don't think there's any doubt in the top 3 teams right now. 4 through 25 is going to get sorted out here soon enough. And look, the Gamecocks do have everything left on the table this year. It's going to be hard, but they do have everything left.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have every opportunity. That's the one thing about the SEC is, you can talk about how tough the schedule is, but, South Carolina has every opportunity to kind of get themselves back to where they want to be. And it's not going to be easy by any choice, just because it's an incredibly difficult October. But, if you do want to, look for some positivity, like as you mentioned just a little while ago, Shane Beamer and South Carolina's teams normally get better as the season goes on. And so we'll see what they show up and look like in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, we got to let Alex go here in a minute. He's got to get some food and get ready for the Big Brother finale. But I do want to highlight some stuff in the chat box. SE Scout Guy, John Mateer is scheduled to be back for our game against OU. It's the first game he can possibly be available. Yeah, man, if he plays, we'll see what happens there. But I agree with Craig. I mean, you'd rather play him his first game coming off an injury than you would, full strength. Carolina Titan, Ty Simpson seems like a good quarterback. Yeah, absolutely. I think that Ty Simpson is really good. I think Julian Sain at Ohio State's really good as well. I've watched both those guys opening weekend. I've been impressed with them all year long. Chalk's right. I can see John Mateer having trouble holding on to the ball. I don't know how big his hands are or anything like that, and how strong they'll be. And then Mark jumps in. What's up, fam? Had to grab my glasses. I thought Alex had on a suit with the $100 bills print. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, Alex got it like that. Don't let him fool you.
Yeah, I was looking down. I was like, I don't think I have $100 bills on you, but maybe I need to look into that.
Well, y'all, we appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. Thank you. When you spend your time with us, you're giving us the most valuable thing you have, which, as you all know, is your time. So thank you so much. Just a little programming note before we get out of here. There will be no Rooster Rant next Sunday. We do Rooster Rant after Gamecock football games, so no Rooster Rant next Sunday. But Wednesday, Alex and I will be back for the Late Night Gamecock show. Obviously, the following Wednesday, we'll be back for the Late Night Gamecock show previewing the LSU game, and then Rooster Rant and all that. We'll follow the normal schedule, but just a week from tonight, no show. Alex, go get ready for Big Brother. We'll let you go on that note, and enjoy your bye week, everybody. Hope you have a lot of fun. Get everything done, all the honey-do list, all the family outings. Do them all this weekend because football is about to get real here if it isn't already for you. But we'll talk to you soon. See everybody.